Welcome to another episode of Leadership Tidbits with Coach T. Wilson. I am your host and leadership mentor, Tywauna Wilson. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have another amazing mentor. As I said before, I bring you mentors from all over. And tonight's mentor is from San Jose, California. So, welcome, Lee. How are you?
T, I'm doing great. It's an honor to be on your podcast. Hoping we can drop some value for listeners, but thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm super excited. I'm always excited to talk about finance and talk about achieving those financial goals. And I know that you have something awesome for our viewers. But before I turn it over to you, I want to welcome all of our guests. So, those of you who are in our virtual learning laboratory, I need you to do a few things. Come in, introduce yourself, let us know where you're coming in from, and share this broadcast out. As I say, you are the key to open up somebody else's door. So somebody might be waiting on you to share this broadcast out. So, a little bit about our mentor tonight. And I'm just going to give you a little bit and then he can give you more because what I'm saying is just the tip of the iceberg. Lee Michael Murphy is the host of an award winning career and money focused podcast called The Free Retiree Show and a wealth manager who helps individuals and companies with their retirement planning. Being a financial advisor goes far beyond setting up clients with a well diversified investment portfolio. It's about giving your clients guidance through the good and the bad times and caring about your clients' dreams as much as they do. So, without further ado, Lee, I'm ready to hear more because that was just like the tip of the iceberg. So, a little bit more about you. And then, what are you going to talk about tonight?
Yeah, thank you for the nice intro, T. I really appreciate it. So for tonight, I'm talking about the 10 tips to achieving your financial goals. So uh, I'm really passionate about this. The whole reason I got into the career of wealth management was because my family growing up, it presented me with opportunities that we wouldn't have had. My grandfather came to this country with absolutely nothing. He worked hard and he was able to become a multimillionaire, become financially free. And it was really amazing to see it from my vantage point as a child, all the things that he did for me, allowed me to go to private school, had my education paid for. So for all those, I'm very grateful, and I wanted to pay it forward and teach people how they can, you know, better their own lives and help their lives for their family. So that's how I got into it. That's my story. And today we're not going to be going over anything too high level, but it's just a lot of important things that move people forward.
Awesome. Well, I think that's awesome. And these reminders are always helpful because I talked about it maybe a month ago with another guest, but we don't do enough talking about financial planning. We don't do enough talking about finance, and they don't really cover it in school. So people are learning via the school of the hard knock life. So I
Hmm.
think it's important for us to hear it another time and hear it a different way because everybody receives information differently. So I'm ready to get into these 10 tips.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start off with the first tip. All right. The first tip is create a budget. It sounds boring. No one likes to do it, but man, this is exactly how people make moves forward in their lives. Is it starts with the budget. No one wants to go and see the damage on the credit card bill or what they spent on their vacation. So it's kind of like one of those things that you just kind of leave it in the closet and it doesn't exist. But in order for us to move forward financially, we contrary to popular belief, a lot of people have this mindset like, well, certain people just have money, they had this job and that's why they do so well. Uh, Doing what I do, the cool thing about it is I've seen people that don't make a ton of money, but they've been able to be smart with their money and it's gotten them forward and it's made them create wealth. And so you got to get that out of your head. It's don't think about it like, oh, these other people just have money. Yes, that's true for a small percentage of the population of the super rich, but we're talking about, everyday folks. Everyday folks for the most part, from what I've seen, they know they do these things that we're talking about today. And it starts with creating a budget. So the thing that I recommend is what we call the 50-30-20 budget. So all that means is 50% of the money, the income you bring in goes to your essential expenses. 30% goes to discretionary, which is the fun money. And then 20% of the money goes to savings and investing.
Awesome. So that's awesome. I'm glad that you talked about you don't have to have a lot of money to still create wealth. So I think that's great.
Yeah, it's not that complicated, but you'd be very surprised to see how many people actually have a budget. And when I say have a budget, is it written down on paper and are you looking at it? I mean, that's the criteria.
Awesome. You can go on with the next tip.
All right. So
I'll let you just keep taking it away.
tip number 2. Now this one's going to sound so different from tip number 1, but tip number 2 is look at your budget. It sounds basic, right? But it's so often people, they think they know what they're supposed to spend, but they don't write it down. And then taking a step further, you have to look at your budget. You have to reevaluate it at least once a month, maybe, 2 or 3 times a month. You should look at it. So tip number 2, look at your budget. How's that one?
That's awesome. That is great. I'll let you keep going through them as I troubleshoot over on this side.
Yeah, see, I think I'm losing you on the feed. So you just want me to keep going?
Yes.
All right. So tip number 3 is to set up accountability. So with finances, it's so easy, to get steered off track and spend money on things we don't need. Um, how we solve that as human beings is to set up some accountability. So whether it's a friend that you can set up kind of a group meeting every month where you talk about your budget, or a loved one, talk about what you're spending and how you're spending. Because for a lot of people that are in relationships, if one spouse or significant other isn't staying on track, it's really easy for the couple as a whole to get steered off track. So I think setting up accountability, and that goes with setting up monthly sessions to get together and talk about what the spending habits have been like, what you've saved, what you spent money on. That's really important. It's kind of like, if you had ever known anyone that's gone through AA or has had an addiction of some sort, one thing they tell you is the beast thrives in the closet. If you don't talk about it, it gets worse, right? And it's kind of the same thing with finances. You have to look at it as like, in order to get better about it, you need to talk about it. And you need to talk about the shortcomings, talk about the successes, and that's how you're going to make progress. So tip number 3, set up some accountability.
Accountability is always needed in
It is hard though.
finance,
All
in
right.
your career, in your business. You got to have accountability. I always talk about having an accountability partner because for some reason or another, it's easier to stay accountable to other people than it is to ourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's why it's important to set up some accountability with a significant other or friends. It's because you're going to be held to a higher standard, and those people care about you and they want to see you do well. So, a lot of people try to say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about finances with those I love," and I think it's kind of the opposite. You have to be transparent, and if for those that are married or in a relationship, finances goes hand in hand. Unfortunately, a leading
Mhm.
cause of divorce is finances. So be
Absolutely.
on the same page. I'm not Dr. Phil or anything, but let's tell you that if you get that on the same page with your loved ones, it makes everything better.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll go on to tip number 4. So tip number 4 is take control of your life by getting out of debt. Debt is something that is stressful. It's a burdensome feeling that you have to owe someone for months at a time, years at a time to pay a debt. Take control of your life and by eliminating all your bad debt. So bad debt are things like credit cards. Those can be auto loans. It can be student debt. Those are the type of debt things. Those are the debt structures that you want to get rid of because they hold you back. And instead of putting money in your pocket to get ahead and move forward financially, you're paying for these people that lent you the money. So tip number 4, take control of your life by getting out of debt. Tip number 5, make your investments automatic. So what does that mean? All too often, I run into people that say, you know what, I'm going to save next month, or in 6 months from now, I'm going to save. I got this going on, so I can't save enough now, but it's going to happen in the future. I will say this. There is never a perfect time to start saving and investing. Just set it up. Make it automatic. You shouldn't have to think about it. You shouldn't have to press a button every month to put the money in, because if you do, it won't happen. One of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, hands down, is setting up an automatic investment plan, an automatic savings plan. When I did that, my wealth grew substantially because I didn't think about it. It wasn't a decision I had to make. I had to make every month. I just said, you know what, I'm setting this up. It's automatic, out of sight, out of mind. And all of a sudden, I look back on everything I did, from 10 years ago, and I'm like, wow, I have this massive amount of wealth that it was effortless, just because I made that decision to say, I'm just going to save and invest, not going to think about it. So don't delay, don't procrastinate, start it today, right? Get those excuses out of your head.
I agree. I like the automatic investing and putting into your savings accounts, especially if you're working, having it directly transition from your payroll check to your specific accounts, I think is helpful.
Mm-hmm. So my next tip number 6, learn to live on less. Now, what does that mean? So there's all kinds of stuff in the credit card statement that we don't need, right? There's a lot of things that we're spending money on for most of us that we don't need. So go through it, especially the beginning of every year. It's a good habit to get in this habit every month. Look at your statement, see what don't I need? There's wants and there's needs, right? You need your medical insurance. You need ample savings, but you don't need the next what's a good example? You don't need like the next movie that's coming out on Netflix. You don't need to buy that. You want to buy those things, right? Or you don't need Starbucks coffee. You want Starbucks coffee, right? So really think about like what you need versus what you want, and and just cut out those things that are wants, and then you're going to see your wealth, flourish.
Absolutely.
All right. So tip number 7, pick up a side hustle. So I always tell people this because most folks that you meet, they say, money's tight, uh, don't have a lot of money that I can save. Well, if that's the case, I mean, first thing, easiest thing, like we went back to the other one, learn to live on less. But if you feel like you absolutely can't, pick up a side hustle. It's a massive impact if you can save an extra few $100s a month and save that money, but not just save it, but invest it. That's what's going to get you ahead. So I think, tip number 7, pick up a side hustle if you need to. If you can't save that 20% we're talking about, if you were going through the budget and we're calculating how much money that you're saving from your income, if you cannot save 20%, pick up a side hustle so you can hit that number.
And when you say pick up a side hustle, give people some ideas, because sometimes people are trying to think of something totally different from what they're already doing. And they're like, it becomes a task. Like, I recommend doing something you're already good at and turning that into a side hustle. But sometimes people are trying to think of totally new things, especially if their time may be limited.
Yeah, I mean, for some folks, it could be, driving an Uber, Lyft, or doing Instacart. There's all kinds of things in the gig economy that you can do to add a little bit of extra money. But a lot of people out there are very talented. They have special skills that they can monetize on. So whether it's being an assistant or offering up some of your skills for some sort of monetary compensation, do that because that little bit of effort can move the needle. So I would say everyone's got a different sort of side hustle, but it doesn't need to be a full-time job. Just that little extra money makes a massive amount of difference if you're investing that money.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. So people don't make it complicated. Get you a side hustle. Everybody has some sort of side gig. So whether it's driving Uber or picking up groceries or watching somebody's kids or utilizing their special skills that they are using to generate some additional income and wealth.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then tip number 8, you're going to love this one. Spend money on something fun. Now the caveat is
Ooh.
you got to be saving 20% of your income, right? So that's
Mhm.
that's the fine print on this one. If you're not
Okay.
saving 20% of your income, I don't give you that pass. But if you're doing that, 30 if you're working the cash flow and the budgeting the way we're discussing right now, 50% to your essentials, 30% to discretionary or fun money, 20% saving, investing. That 30%, that discretionary, go ahead and use it. Right. So all too often I run into folks that are like, oh, don't spend money. Don't spend money. I can't spend money. And every time they spend money, it's a bad thing. They feel bad about it. You can't feel that way. You have to reward yourself and you have to live. And by doing the right things like we're talking about today, saving and investing, reward yourself. Go ahead and go on vacation. Go ahead and have some fun. As long as you're doing that, 20% savings and investing, you can reward yourself every now and then. So I'd say, and that can also be, like the carrot that kind of drives you forward. So yeah, I would say, you know, plan something to reward yourself for doing a good job. Don't go overboard. Don't put yourself in debt and spend a ton of money. Don't go. So, people get out of control with this one, but I say, within reason, right? As long as it works
Mhm.
in the budget, that 30% discretionary, save up a little bit month after month. And once you have enough from that 30% for discretionary, use it for something to reward yourself. So that I think is very important. And it kind of helps in the whole big plan, because if you don't have that, you're just going to get frustrated and you're like, well, screw it. I'm just going to spend the money. And, there's this whole saving, investing thing just stinks. I'm
Mhm.
what do they call it? I'm YOLOing. You don't want to do
Right.
that. YOLO within reason.
So
I don't
you
know.
think
That's a
it's
saying
always
anymore.
important, especially with the savings, to have some kind of a goal or some kind of fun, whether it's a new couch or vacation or something like that. Is it some kind of reward?
Absolutely. So you got to work. You got to look at your budget and see if that 30% that we're talking about of your income. Make
Mhm.
sure you're taking from that to save up enough money to reward yourself, whether it's a vacation, a new couch, that's up to you. But make sure you're using that money and you're spending that money. It shouldn't be every single, a lot of people have this mindset that every dollar that they spend on fun stuff is bad. We can't have that mindset. You have to look at it differently. You have to look at it like, I deserve to spend money on fun things and experiences as long as I'm doing my job in terms of saving that 20% and investing it.
I'm happy you talked about mindset, and I know we have just a few more tips, but can you talk a little bit about that mindset and money? Because I know people struggle with that, of the saving and that whole reward and that, negative self-talk. Maybe they grew up with money don't grow on trees or other notions when they grew up. So they have a negative connotation with money. So can you talk a little bit about reprogramming if necessary mindset to be able to create that path to wealth?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple mindsets that are really important. Don't limit yourself. Like I touched on that in the beginning, limiting self-talk. Thinking I can't do this because I wasn't born into money. I don't have, this job that John Smith has. Why and that's why he's doing so well. So it's just not fair, and there's nothing I can do about it. That's the mindset that really destroys a lot of people. Like I said in the beginning, the cool thing about finances is you don't need to make a lot of money. It's all about habit. It's habit and mindset. Yes, if you make a ton of money, it helps. I'm not gonna lie about that. It does. Mr. Bezos is gonna have a head start over you. That's just the facts. But you can make amazing progress even if you don't make a lot of money through your decision making. That involves delayed gratification. That's a huge part of this whole game and the wealth creation. Uh, Being able to delay the gratification. So we're talking about spending money on fun things. Yeah, do it, but make sure you saved, you know, uh, X amount of dollars every single month to justify that purchase, right? If we say like, all right, in that discretionary income, that 30%, we want to take a vacation that's $1,000. We got to wait 5 months, saving $200 a month from that fund, the money that's allocated there to take and book that vacation. So it's just that thought process of delaying the gratification until you really deserve it. So yeah, it's all about mindset. Mindset is massive in this ability to grow wealth.
That was good. I like that of really sticking to it. And if it, like you said, that vacation, if it costs $1,000, then save and then book that vacation. But reward yourself for your action, for your reaching your goals. I think that's
Mhm.
important.
Absolutely. Tip number 9 is be honest with your financial behavior. Now, we
Ooh.
all have reasons of why we haven't got to where we wanted to be. I mean, and you have to basically sit down in the mirror and say, all
Hmm.
right, what is it with me that keeps me from growing my wealth? If you're in that category, maybe you're doing a fantastic job, look in the mirror and smile, pat yourself on the back. But for a lot of us, we struggled to build our wealth, or we're still struggling to build our wealth. And that involves just being realistic about what detrimental qualities you have in your relationship with money. Is it the fact that you spend money on, you might be doing a great job of saving your money, but then every couple of years you make a bad decision on, I'm going to buy this really expensive car, and that's what holds you back? Or is it everyday activity? Are you spending money just constantly? Are you on Amazon all day long just buying? Is your front door constantly getting knocks from the UPS guy just dropping off packages because you're just going crazy online with your online shopping? What is it that's really holding you back? And just be honest with it. If you looking at your financial picture and you say like, man, I don't have a lot of money to my name. Now you could just say like, oh, well, it's just not fair. Low is me. I wasn't dealt a good hand in life and all the bad things happen to me. I'm Igor. There's a lot of people you meet that are like that. And it's just kind of sad because it's like they give all their excuses they make,
Hmm.
for the most part, there's yeah, maybe there's some truth to it, but from what I've seen, there's a lot of people that make these excuses up in their mind, and it's only a small part of the truth. If they look themselves in the mirror and said, "What's really happening?" They'd see that they're irresponsible with money, or they made these big purchases that they shouldn't have made. Um, so it's just learning to be honest with yourself. I think that's massively important in this whole um, wealth creation game. I even myself, being in wealth management, there was a point in my life where I'm like, man, I'm not as far ahead as I want to be, and why is that? And for me, I had to really have just a heart to heart with myself, I guess, and just say like, you have to realize you're bad at this, and you need to change that. And so, whatever it is for you that's holding you back, be honest about it. Write it down. Put it on a sticky note. Put it in the mirror, Just so you know, like, and that's part of the first step of moving forward.
So, what are some questions that people can ask themselves to kind of see if they are being honest with themselves about their finance?
There's a multitude of questions, but let's start with some basic ones. Am I saving 20% of my income? If you're not, you know, you're not doing a good enough job. Like, you're either not working hard enough, not side hustling hard enough. You haven't worked for that promotion to make your numbers work, and you're allowing yourself to spend too much. So I think it starts there. Like, if you can't say, if you're not saving 20% and investing, I think you have to peel back the onion and be honest with what's going on. Um, I meet I'm in the Silicon Valley and I work with a ton of people in the Silicon Valley that have very lucrative jobs. And they always come up with reasons of why they're not saving that 20%. They're like, well, I'm spending all this money on, this rent and, for food and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but maybe you got to change your life. Maybe you have to, like, you know, yeah, downgrade your living situation, not spend so much rent on this house that you can't afford, or maybe you shouldn't be buying these lavish vacations, right? So going back to the being honest, I think the thing you can look at is, if you don't have ample savings, 3 to 6
Mhm.
months of cash in the bank, that's a problem. 3 to 6 months of cash. You got to have that. If you don't have that, that's a warning sign. If you're not saving 20%, that's another warning sign. There's a whole bunch of other ones, but I'll just keep it pretty high level.
Okay. That makes sense. So, viewers out there, those are questions. You have to be honest with yourself and be honest with your finance. And if you know you don't have that uh, money in the bank, that 3 to 6 months in the bank, if you know that you can't honestly say that you're saving, then you might need to reevaluate and think about your budget. So, I think that's a great point that you
Yeah.
mentioned, Lee.
And then the last one, number 10. Are you ready? Are you ready, T?
Doo-doo-doo-doo!
Oh, that was a great sound effect. Yes, that's perfect. So, tip number 10 is, think of the life you've always wanted to live. That is kind of where it starts as well. I talked about the budget, how, that's the first part of it, but
Mhm.
I think even before that, think about the life you always want to live, but there's a little caveat here. It can't be more money and it can't be around material things. That's where people go wrong. They always want more money, they want more material stuff, and that's what holds people back. So example for me is, in my 20s, there was a multitude of problems in my 20s. Lee Murphy in his 20s was a bad person, probably. There's probably a lot of there might be a lot of ex-girlfriends that would say, oh yeah, he was terrible. But my mindset was like, I want more money. I just, graduating college, you think, I just want a ton of money and that's going to solve all my problems. So my vision in my 20s was like, yes, a Range Rover. Yeah, I want that. House was really nice. Everything. Yeah, I want that. Just traveling to all these places and blowing a bunch of cash. Yeah, I want that. And then you get older, you get wiser, and you realize, like, that's not what life's about. That's stupid. Like, you want to think about, like, can I take care of my loved ones? Can I live a life that gives me experiences within reason? So now my definition would be not having to worry about, not being, sent to collections and, you know, it's bigger than that now. I think now, if I define it, it's, can my wife and I go have coffee on a Monday or Tuesday morning and not have to worry, right? Can I take her to a local place, buy a newspaper, buy some coffee, and not be in a stressed state of mind? And that's what my definition is now. I want to still do what I'm doing because I love the impact of helping people accumulate wealth and helping them accomplish their goals. That's important to me. But I want to be in a financial situation where I don't have to do that. I want to be able to say, all right, you know what, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm taking that off because I can. Or, I'm starting every day by taking my loved one out and doing something nice for them. Not a lot of money, but just something, something that shows that I have that financial freedom to live the life that I want to live. So going back to this is don't get fixated on money and material things. I meet so many people that make so much money and they have almost nothing because lifestyle creep. They make more money, they spend more money, and they're slaves to the things that they're buying. Their home, all the fun lifestyle stuff. Uh, that just holds you back. So think about what your loved ones need and learn to live on less and learn to live a life within reason. I think that's vitally important to many of the people that I work with and many of the people that I've seen achieve financial freedom. That's how they live their lives. And I'm going back full circle to my grandfather. He came with nothing, became a multimillionaire. This man drove this like the same car for 30 years. Uh, he didn't buy nice things. He wanted to make sure his family was taken care of. And, now that I've been in my profession for 10 plus years, I can tell you that most of the people that I run into that are doing well financially have got that figured out. They might have some nice things, but they're not going overboard. They realize what matters. It's taking care of their families and, learning to live a life within reason.
I think that's very important, that nugget that you mentioned. And we hear that a lot, even so, more so today, about financial freedom and living a life where we're financially free. And you talked about it and defining it for yourself. But what advice would you give to somebody that's new in their career? Because a lot of people that listen to this show are either new in their career or they still have plenty of career to go, meaning they're nowhere near retirement. But what kind of advice would you give to those people? Because it's sometimes it's like, well, I need to get promoted so that I can make more money, and it all goes to making more money. But you mentioned, with more money come more responsibility. I mean, there's a lot that comes with more money, and sometimes we equate more money to financial freedom, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, there's the very wise saying, mo money, mo problems, right? Said by a very wise man. It, I would say if you're starting off, some of the things that we talked about today, that last tip, think about the life you always want, free from material things and money. Think about that first. Then once you got that down, then you move forward and then you look at your budget. That's the next step. You try to make sure you're living by these principles that we're talking about, 50, 30, 20. And then the things that you can do that you can take some action on, start saving immediately. There will never be the perfect time for most of us. Some of us have been blessed and are very wealthy, but it's, to your listeners, it's a very small percentage. It gets blown up by the media. It's not what I've seen. Even in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of wealth that I'm around. I hardly meet people that are just, oh, they have just so much money that, they don't know what to do with. There's some that are well to do, but get that mindset right. Start now. Start saving as soon as possible, whatever it is. If you can get to that 20% number, what can you do to get to that savings of 20% of your wealth as quick as possible? Even if you're in retirement, I recommend, people save 5% to keep moving forward and kind of combat the unexpected things that happen in our retirement. And then I would also say, real estate is a huge part of the wealth equation that many financial people fail to realize. But it's not just a primary residence. It's, getting into investment real estate is part of it. Yeah. So you could start by getting, into a primary residence and then dovetail that into investments and investment real estate. So I think those are some things that, saving to your 401k, those are actionable things that you need to work towards as fast as you can, and it's going to just help you in your journey.
And I know some people, and I'm happy you mentioned about the 401k, and some people may be hesitant to, put their money away. They feel like maybe that, they can't afford it. What are your thoughts around that? Because I know you talk about the 20%. Is that 20% in 401k savings? Is that at 20% in our regular savings? Just in case if there's any clarity that the audience might have, or is that just their portfolio period? And I'm thinking we may have some people that, that are new to savings. And so they're like, okay, I'm trying to get the equations, I'm trying to get it down, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out where to maximize. Should I put in my savings account at my bank first and then my 401? Or is there
Okay.
a strategy?
Okay. So let's dive into that a little bit more. So let's just say we got this 20% saving thing down. First thing, take out that bad debt that we're talking about, the credit card, the car, the student loans. Make sure you get that done. Get that out of the way. Then we go to the emergency fund. That's that 3 to 6 months sitting in just a checking or savings account. If you have two sources of income, or if like it's a household with two sources of income, you need at least 3 months. If it's one source of income, it's 6 months. That's to be specific, but 3 to 6 months is what you need in checking savings. You need that because if you don't have that, life always throws us curveballs that set us back. So if we don't have that in checking and savings, you're going to turn to credit cards and you're going to get into this negative repeating cycle where you turn to credit cards and you're stuck paying interest on those. So to prevent that, set up that emergency fund. After that, start funding your retirement account, whatever it is. There's different retirement vehicles that people have. Whatever it is for you, start funding that immediately. And also start funding some money into an investment account that's maybe not for retirement savings. That's part of it as well. Save it up so you can maybe make a real estate purchase somewhere down the line. Don't let too much money sit in cash, because then you're going to lose to inflation. So I think that's a starting point right there. And the more you can save, the better. But I think with that criteria, you're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And I know some of our viewers are readers, and so they're always trying to look for additional resources. So whether it's books or podcasts or trainings, what kind of resources would you recommend for the beginner that's saving and they're just starting out on that journey?
You know what? I'm going to recommend this one podcast. What's it called? The Free Retiree Show. That's the one that I'm on. But I have to do the shameless self plug right there, because I mean, I really don't know a ton of podcasts out there that talk about what we talk about, but the whole premise of our podcast is really to clear up the BS that's around career, around finances, so people can achieve financial freedom. We do have other interviews on there where we talk with people that have been wildly successful, and we learn what they've done to become successful. So our podcast is all about, getting successful in your career, using that success and wealth to put into your investments so you can become financially free. And what we're doing is we're trying to sift through all the things that are out there. And there's a lot. There's a lot of bad information about your career that holds you back. There's a lot of bad information about finances. And what we are about is trying to figure out what has worked the best, what's the quickest way that people can achieve financial success. So if you are interested in that, check out the Free Retiree Show. And you'll also learn from some great people. We've had some fantastic guests that have been wildly successful. And our job is to figure out what their mindset is. As you talked about, T, like mindset is huge. We try to learn that as well from people that we bring on, whether they're talking about career or whether they're talking about their financial ideas and thoughts and experiences.
Will our viewers be able to find that on their favorite podcast platform? Do you have a link? Where can viewers get and stay connected with the podcast?
All they got to go to is their favorite podcast outlet. We're on pretty much every one. Just type in the free retire it's got 2 E's at the end, show, and we'll pop up.
So
Subscribe.
yeah, so viewers, make sure you check that out. They have all kind of awesome tips for you. So make sure you look that up on your favorite podcast platform. So as you look and find this one, if you're listening to the audio version, then make sure you add in the free retiree podcast to your playlist as well. Awesome. You got any book recommendations?
Book recommendations. At the current, I don't really have good book recommendations. My hobby is I'm a soccer coach, so I read a lot of books about soccer coaching.
Mhm.
So no, I mean, unless you're a soccer coach, you don't want to read that. But right now, no great book recommendations. And most of the stuff I read is about finances, and they're really dry. So I have boring reads. So no one wants to read what I read.
Well, I thought I would ask because we do have people that are avid readers. So, just in case, if you had some recommendations, but right now, and I know people consume information a variety of ways. So, audio, books, podcasts, video. So, I think that's very helpful. Well, these 10 tips were awesome. I love the simplicity of it and getting people back to their goals, that creating your budget and that accountability piece, I think, is huge to start taking control of their life and automating. Because as we all know, we'll be like, well, next week, next pay period, next month, I'll send over, some funds to my savings, and it doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily happen.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things that hold people back in the wealth creation, financial freedom game, but probably none more than procrastination.
Hmm.
It is the worst. So all these people, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and you know, 5, 10 years later, still in the same spot. So start it off as early as you can. It's amazing the people that I run into, um, that how we said in the beginning, start saving, investing. There's people that, I'm not that old. I'm getting up there in age, but let's just say I'm mid 30s esque, right? And I work with people that are in retirement, but I also work with people that are close to my age, and you know I'm I have friends that they have next to nothing to their name. They might have less than 30, $50,000 living in the Silicon Valley. It's not a lot. And then I have friends that, or people I work with that are maybe a little bit younger than me, a little bit older than me, but close to the same age. And they have hundreds of thousands of dollars and uh, probably millions on paper when you count of all their assets that they have. And it's just because they started right away. They started right out of the gate, right when they got out of college. Uh, they started this. They didn't say like, oh, well, I'm going to start next month. They said, no, I start now, saving right away, and we'll just see what happens. So don't think about it. It's that saying, Nike, just do it. Just do it. That's part of it, right? You just gotta just stop thinking of all the excuses. You're gonna think of a ton of them. There's tons of excuses out there, but you gotta just take action. Don't think about it. Like I said for myself, like I'm doing pretty good now in my financial journey. And a lot of it's just because I said, you know what? I'm gonna make this whole wealth thing automatic. It happens every month. I invest every month. I don't have to think about it. Go ahead and do that. Set it up for your retirement account, set it up for your own investment account. And it's not rocket science. It's just all goes back to this thing called mentality.
What advice would you give somebody that feel like they've messed up and they had debt and they're trying to dig out of it and they feel like that, it's too late? What would your advice be for somebody that's in that state, that's willing and wanting to do better, but they are in a state of starting over and maybe not quite sure where or how to start?
I think there's a lot of people that run into that. And I would just say that, it's never too late. You might have to have a different strategy. If you feel like you are just consumed with debt, with credit card debt, there's a way to get out of that. There's I can't talk about them in detail, but there's ways to strategically get out of those situations. Same thing with student debt. A lot of people you meet today are just overwhelmed with student debt, hundreds of thousands. I'm never going to get rid of it. There's nothing I can do. That's not true. You can do things strategically to overcome that. Talk to a student debt lawyer that knows, you know, the different options that are out there for you. Focus on accumulating assets. There's different strategies for different folks, but it's never too late. And these mistakes, the thing is, like, we all make mistakes, but the thing is, like, can you learn from these mistakes? Right? The road to success, I will say this, the road to success was built on bricks called failure. And, if you're failing at anything, that's fine. That's a brick, but you just have to learn. You have to you can't make the same bricks. You guys got to learn after you do it, after you make the mistake, and just, recalibrate, have a different strategy. So don't feel bad that if you made a mistake that you feel like it's going to hold you back forever. That I don't find that to be true. Figure out a way to get around it. And you might have to think creatively. Maybe you can't save enough to get out of it. All right, then let's think of some more creative strategies, like talking to a student debt lawyer, looking at, settlement options for your debt. If you can't really get out of it. But for most people, I find that they just don't want to.
That's good. That makes good sense. So before we wrap up, what would be your one or two tidbits that you would like to leave the viewers with on getting started on their journey?
Go back to the Nike saying, just do it. Just do it. Stop making excuses. Stop being a wuss. That's this is the most elegant way I can put it to you. Take action, right? Take action. And part of the wealth journey is also delaying gratification. That's a huge part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Delay gratification. And if there's another one, don't be too fearful or too greedy. I think those are my three right there. You can't, if you're too fearful, that's bad. Most of the people that I work with that are really struggling, that their wealth is growing at a snail pace, is they're too fearful.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take some risk to grow your wealth. That's just the way it is. And don't be too greedy. When people get too greedy, they make stupid mistakes, picking stocks and crypto and day trading. I mean, I've met very few positive outcomes. Although the media wants to put it in this light that it's the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say I've seen that, being in my career for as long as I have. Sure, it's out there, just like I'm sure that unicorns are out there to some level. But it might work for some out there, but for the masses, there's being too greedy, having strategies that aren't backed by academic research. That's a mistake right there. So those would be my things. Just do it, right? Don't be
Mm-hmm.
too fearful. Don't be too greedy. And delay the gratification.
Those are good. That's the huge thing. I read that recently, which separates people from an abundant mindset versus those that don't, are those who take action, those who are wealthy and those who are not. The difference isn't how smart one is or anything like that. It's the ability to act. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I
Let's
think
do
you
it. I hope
just
I
do
get a
it.
sponsorship from Nike, because I've been on your podcast. So
I know that's key. Maybe you never know. Somebody could be watching or listening to this podcast, and so maybe they could be like, Lee Murphy just said, just do it. He said our
You should at least get a free Nike T-shirt if anyone from Nike's out there.
So, how can our viewers get and stay connected with you? I know you talked about the podcast, but how can they get and stay connected with you? Maybe they said, well, he's talking about some information that I really want to hear more about. His strategies are practical and they're easy, and so it seems like, this may be the person, maybe the voice that can help me get from zero to the next step. So how can they get and stay connected with you?
Yeah, well, a couple ways. Check out our podcast. You can listen to us on long drives if you want. The Free Retiree Show. You can also email ask at thefreeretiree.com. If you have a question, we do show requests for people. If there's a topic in mind that they want us to talk about, on the podcast, we have a guy that a really good friend of mine. He's a career advisor and interview coach. Works at LinkedIn, helps people advance in their careers. And then we have an attorney that we have the attorney on, is also a good friend of ours, but he keeps people out of making bad mistakes. But that's the makeup of the podcast. Also, if you want, you can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Just type in Lee Michael Murphy, and you can reach out to me and follow me on there.
Awesome. So, viewers, make sure that you get and stay connected with Lee Michael Murphy. If you're on LinkedIn, which I know a lot of you who are watching this podcast are on LinkedIn, or if you are listening, then reach out to him on LinkedIn and make sure you get connected with the podcast so that you are able to get some practical information that you can use to benefit your career and your financial life. So, Lee Murphy, this was awesome.
Thank you so much, T. It's been a pleasure being on your podcast. Thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing with my audience. I think these tips were awesome. Great reminder, great information. And so, as you said, and as Nike say, just do it.
Right? Nike, you better send me some sneakers if you're listening.
Awesome. So thank you, viewers, for tuning in. You could drop in the comments your favorite tip that Lee Murphy talked about today. So drop in the comments. We'll love to hear what was your takeaways from this show. And as you know, on Tuesdays, the Elaborate Topics podcast, a new episode release. So, a new episode released today. Make sure that you check that out. You can find it on Direct Impact Broadcasting or your favorite podcast platform. So, until next week, my friends, make sure you tune in, same time, same channel, same place, where we will have another amazing mentor. And until then, have an awesome week.